What's up, Buckeye Nation? We have to have a little talk. There have been a lot of emotions flying, but first, do us a favor subscribe to the channel if you like what you see. Like the video, it helps us grow. We're looking for 5,000 subscriptions before the season starts. This is, of course, Ohio State Football with Scarlet N Great right here on YouTube. Your host, Floco, today, going solo. Was going to have Dylan, but the issues with the technical difficulties that we were having, I had to just re-record the show because there's a lot of recruiting stuff I want to get to that I want to talk about because the reaction from Buckeye Nation to some of the Ohio State's maybe I guess you call it recruiting woes. I wouldn't say woes. I mean it's a little bit dramatic and extreme, but going for the last couple of days of really been kind of surprising to say the least because I think a lot of people need to be talked off the ledge, and then some other people also need to be brought back to reality that these are big misses, but we're going to be fine. It's funny because I've been watching Twitter quite a bit, and I see you guys conversate with each other often, and it's funny because there's two frames of mind with this. We obviously you just Tackett Curtis just went to USC, and that was a big time Ohio State target. And it looks like we're losing Caleb Downs to Alabama, which it's Alabama. It is what it is. And we people weren't too happy with the offensive line recruiting with Miles Walker being the latest commit. And I just want to talk a little briefly about all of that going forward. I don't think that those aren't you don't want to lose those battles. You're going to lose them sometimes, but you don't want to. But at the same time, I don't think people are really considering what's on the roster right now, and what we have going forward, and where we are with our coaching staff right now in this early stage, in the early stage of this coaching staff, because these are battles and positions where the coaches are brand new to Ohio State. So I think there's a lot of factors that people aren't considering. The people who want to, the sky is falling, want to jump off the ledge, think everything's coming to a halt for Ohio State. The golden era of football for Ohio State is starting to wane a little bit. Um, I want to tackle first the Jim Knowles things because there's actually people out there calling for him to be fired. I just can't even believe how ridiculous that is. And I understand when Jim Knowles actually came into Ohio State, he didn't have the reputation as like the greatest recruiter in the world. I mean, I get all that, I really do. But at the same time, he had never recruited with the Ohio State brand behind him before. He recruited at Oklahoma State and Duke and Cornell, and those aren't powerhouse recruiting places. So I think there has to be a little slack given. There's one thing, the aspect we lost Tackett Curtis to USC. I mean, that's obviously that by now. It was a little bit of a surprise, and we saw the crystal balls coming in like by Spiegelman and then like Wilfong, and we started thinking, oh man, how we lose this guy? Jim Knowles really did put a lot of work into this guy, and you wonder how did he lose him? How did he lose him? And I think there's a couple of factors people aren't really considering with this. Let's look at Knowles. Yeah, we know what he can do on as a defensive coach, right? And that's why Ryan Day hired him. By the way, he may not be the super recruiter you want him to be, but we hired him to be the architect of rebuilding the Ohio State Silver Bullet defense. And by all means, his track record shows that he can do that. And all camp updates, I mean, granted, you have to prove it on the field, but all camp updates so far suggest that he is doing that at a rapid pace. Now that he loses out on Tackett Curtis, and people think, "Oh man, he can't recruit." Well, I don't know. That remains to be seen with the block O behind him. But there's a couple things you have to consider. I mean, right now it's theory, not testimony, like Urban Meyer used to say with our defense. I mean, these guys like Tackett Curtis and other players since their freshman year, they've been seeing a tragically bad Ohio State defense. No matter the fact we've changed coordinators. I mean, from Shiano, Halfley was great for a year. From Shiano, Halfley to Combs, the defense more often than not has been pretty bad. And not just like kind of just okay bad. I mean, just historically bad for Ohio State, or tragically bad. So I think people need to consider that's what these guys that are in their senior year, going into their senior year of high school, that's all they've seen is Ohio State being terrible at defense. Even going, I mean, on linebacker play especially, let's dive into that. At Ohio State, it hasn't been good since Luke Fickell. That's just a fact. I thought Bill Davis would be fine, and he wasn't. I thought Al Washington would improve it. He didn't. His recruiting was okay, but he didn't obviously improve the linebacker play. Now, whether that was because of Combs' system or not, I don't know. It seemed to be better with Halfley, and Halfley was the golden coach for the defense for 1 year, and then he bolted, and we just did not do a good job replacing him. In fact, for those of you who are complaining about Jim Knowles recruiting, we in part hired Combs because of the fact that he was a great recruiter for Ohio State, and we needed to rebuild that secondary, which Combs was doing, but obviously You can recruit all the players you want, but look, if your defense is terrible, what does it matter? I mean, at some point you have to favor the actual coaching over the recruiting. And I think Ryan Day did that a little bit with Knowles, and understanding that he wasn't bringing in these high profile recruits, but he can turn 3 and 4 star guys, low 4 star guys, into all conference players. Imagine what he could do with the talent level that Ohio State automatically brings in. So I think that in Ryan Day's mindset, that's probably what's going on. I need somebody just to fix this thing. I mean, whether or not he can be as the greatest recruiter ever, can he actually fix this thing? And he has to contend. He's old school. He's 56, 57 years, 57 now, I think. He's old school. The NIL is brand new. I mean, this is not your same go into a living room anymore and, hey, I'm going to talk you into coming to my school anymore and build a great relationship with you. This is what's the best deal you can get. And I don't know what the NIL deals were from Ohio State to USC, but Jim Knowles is obviously going to have to be on a learning curve here to actually learn how to utilize that more. I'm sure a young guy like Alex Grinch over at USC already understands that a lot better than a guy who's 57 years old, been in the game forever, and did it one way forever. And Lincoln Riley also being a young head coach. I mean, these younger coaches seem to understand it a lot better, being from this generation, probably relating to these kids a lot better going forward. But I mean, again, it's something that Jim Knowles, an old head, has to contend with now. Will he adjust to it? We'll see. It's not just the same lunch pail going to the living room and win over mom anymore. It's just not. That's just not what it is anymore. I don't know if NIL had to do with it or not. How much it had to do with it? I'm sure it did. It's LA, it's USC. I mean, obviously it has something to do with it. But again, I don't know what in the 11th hour came to USC or USC came with what kind of offer they came with. So we have to consider the fact it could be an NIL deal. Consider the fact that this Tackett Curtis is probably not seen Ohio State's linebacker play, but ever been good. I mean, was he watching college football in 2014? Who knows? And then you have to look at another aspect of it is USC. If you look at their roster, compare the rosters. USC. I was looking at their roster. I'm not an expert on USC's roster by any stretch of the imagination, but on their linebackers, I counted 6 out of 8 that were seniors or juniors. There's probably a better path for Tackett Curtis to get on the field faster at USC. And I'm not saying he's afraid of competition. I'm not saying we cooled on him. I'm not saying that we just didn't want him. We obviously wanted him badly. He was our top priority at linebacker. But at the same time, if you're a kid looking at probably a good NIL deal at USC, and you probably have a faster path to the forward to the field. I mean, you look at Ohio State's roster, look what it is. It's the sky's not falling. Look what it is right now. You got CJ Hicks coming up. We know he's a beast. We have no doubt in our minds he's going to be a beast. You got Gabe Powers, another borderline 5-star kid who's a freshman. These are 2 freshmen, by the way. And you also have, guys that are really close, like Reed Carrico, who's going in his second year. And he's finding his niche in this defense. And then you got guys who've been around for a little while. They've got maybe 2 years left on him, like Ship Trayanum. He hadn't been around for a while, but obviously Tommy Eichenberg, who finished strong last season. And then he got Steel Chambers probably got 1 more year. Taraja Mitchell obviously only got 1 more year. But and then you got Cody Simon is another one who's probably here for 2 more years. I'm sorry for forgetting anybody. But again, that's just an example of what we have. Linebacker going to be a little harder, I think, to get onto the field. And I say that because also the kind of defense we're going to be running is at 3-3-5 with Jim Knowles, and part of that 3 and the second part of the defense there is going to be a Leo position. It's going to be a Jack Sawyer type that plays all over the defensive line. So we're basically be having 2 linebackers at all times. Zach Smith talked about it on the Menace to Society podcast, where we're going to have just 2 linebackers on the field most of the time. So we're not going to have the big numbers in recruiting anymore. And it's going to be a little bit tougher to get. We're still going to get dogs in the future, but it's going to be a little bit tougher to recruit linebackers than it has been, especially when you have such a logjam with like potential all Big Ten, maybe even all American type players and CJ Hicks, Gabe Powers, and people like that. And Reed Carrico was an extremely highly ranked linebacker coming out of high school as well. But we're still going to get guys probably like Avil Reese out of Glenville, who is a really nice player. So we're going to have good additions to linebackers. So I don't think the sky's falling just yet. But I will say this, for people who say that it's not a big deal, if we get into year 2 and year 3 of Jim Knowles and he's still struggling to recruit a really good linebacker here and there, then I think you can start to say, okay, there's a problem with his recruiting pitch. and how he recruits. His coaching may be on point, but he's at some point it matters. The bloodline of every program is great recruiting. I think we've recruited well enough to keep us going for a while, and I can't wait to see what this young talent gets to do with a really good coach in Jim Knowles, who's proven his mettle from program to program. So I do want people to stop kind of like freaking out about that, but also really jumping real quick to Caleb Downs. I don't like losing him, but again, the secondary class we're bringing in is actually pretty good. Uh, I mean, it stinks to lose Downs. He's a great player, obviously, but it's Bama. Bama gets what Bama wants. They have that testimony versus theory. We have 2 new secondary coaches. Let's see the secondary after a year and see how secondary recruiting possibly blows up if we get the results that we kind of expect to get from Walton and Eliano. Again, we have to show people we can do it. But I want to move real quick before I run out of time here to the offensive line. It's an area of concern for me too. I get it, and we know what we do is next year is basically an area of uncertainty when it comes to the offensive line. Paris Johnson's the left tackle this year. DeJuan Jones, the right tackle this year. Both of them are going pro after this year. Paris Johnson probably figures to be a top 15 pick. That's where he's projected. DeJuan Jones, like you can see him sneak into the second round, third round type player. Who knows? I mean, he may have a great year and blow up a little bit. Who knows? But then next year, what are you doing for tackle? Well, it's that's the problem is Buckeye fans are dealing with the uncertainty of that for next year, and we know it's a so important position. Left tackle. Who's going to be your left tackle next year? I mean, Donovan Jackson, from what I understand, I'm hearing is he's going to start guard this year and then move to left tackle next year. So what we're doing again, like we do with Paris Johnson, we're breaking in another guard. I know he came in as a tackle. Don't get me wrong. I get it. But he played guard for the first 2 years in college. So we're breaking in another guard to be the left tackle over off season. And he's a little bit smaller. He's a 6'4" guy. You know, he's still got the size, but he's just not. He's like Jamarco Jones, put it at left tackle essentially. And who's the right tackle at that point? I mean, do we even know? I don't know. But you hear good things about George Fitzpatrick and Zen Mikowski. There's still Grant Toutant, guys who were 4 stars and good pickups. And this is where I'm talking about. We got to be comfortable with the uncertainty. I mean, I own my own business, and there is a level of uncertainty to that you have to learn to be comfortable with. I'm not perfect at it. I mean, I'm not going to claim that I've mastered it by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's pertinent for Buckeye fans when they push their passion into the Ohio State Buckeyes and want them to win at all costs. Say, look, just because you don't have the answer right this second doesn't mean the answer won't present itself later. You hear good things about these guys in camps. Who's to say that they can't step up and be really good players for us, especially at right tackle down the road? Maybe even they hit the transfer portal and get a nice surprise. They've done it before. Where like Jonah Jackson was a great example of that. Who's now a starter in the NFL. I believe he's still a starter in the NFL. Again, and then there's also guys like Ben Chrisman who are still here. I mean, I know he's a guard technically, but who's to say who's to say exactly who steps up? Enoch Viamahi, does he step up and be that right tackle? There's guys there to potentially, and then you also got young guys like Tegrich or Shabola. I can't say his name correctly. I mean, these are guys that were brought in to be in that tackle position. So just don't forget about what we have on the roster already. And then they bring up a guy like Miles Walker, who's a 3-star kid from Connecticut. And I understand a lot of people were upset about that because it's not this big 5-star dog. And I get that. I think line of scrimmage recruiting is sexy. I love getting great line of scrimmage players. I love getting offensive and defensive linemen that are all big, meaty 5-star guys and just nasty on the field. That's how you win championships, point blank, no matter what offensive and defensive alignments and adjustments are made through time. And, it all starts with the line of scrimmage, and it always will. But Miles Walker is a guy who was recruited by Steve Adazio, Texas A&M. He was recruited by Iowa, Penn State. It isn't like, he's a bum. He's a 3-star. He needs some time to bulk up and build up, but he's got the athleticism. He's already 6'6" from Connecticut. And Steve Adazio, I'm going to give Zach Smith credit on this. Zach Smith on his podcast literally suggested that if Steve Adazio is going after you, then you're a good player. And Justin Frye beat Steve Adazio in his home state of Connecticut for this kid. And I mean, don't sleep on that. Man, he's a project. It'll take him a couple years for sure. but he ends up being I mean, how many 3 stars come to Ohio State, like Chris Olave, for example, Darren Lee, for example, Malik Hooker, who come out of nowhere and you don't think anything of them because of their star ranking and they end up being stars for Ohio State. There's no reason to think that this guy can't be that another one of those if Justin Frye deems him worthy. Even if these other really solid programs deem him worthy, especially guys like our teams like Iowa, who are great at offensive line development. And I mean, Steve Adazio, one of the best offensive line coaches in the country, is after him. So I think that's something to consider as well. But I do agree. I do want to see an uptick in offensive line recruiting going into the years. But again, remember, these coaches have just got there. This is their first recruiting cycle, and they're trying to play catch up in their new jobs. And I think a lot of people don't take that into consideration, unfortunately. And also, Ohio State itself, with their gritty compliance department, is trying to play catch up with the NIL with the rest of the country. So these coaches are even a little bit hamstrung, just a little bit, in what they can offer. So give it time, give these coaches time, and let's just see what they produce on the field. Because again, these guys got to see what the players they build relationships for the future have got to see what these guys do on the field, what the product they coach on the field. I mean, remember, and we still got a real dog in Luke Montgomery coming. So the sky's not falling, guys. It's not time to fire everybody. Calm down a little bit. I do understand we need to meet our needs a little bit better in some areas in this recruiting class, but I would say calm down. It's July. We still have the number 1 or number 2 class in the country. I understand it's a little weighted heavily because of the defensive line recruiting and wide receiver recruiting, which, by the way, somebody please sit down with Hartline. If you're struggling recruiting, sit down with Brian Hartline and ask him what he's doing, because that dude is unreal. Not only can he get 3 5-stars in one class, but he can get them to announce in a playful way one day after another. So if Fry or Knowles or somebody, if you're having struggling recruiting, go to Brian Hartline and well, dude, teach me. Just teach me. Anyway, guys, I appreciate you for listening. Comment below what you think about our current state of our recruiting. Do you feel confident about it? Do you not feel confident about it? Are you getting a little worried? Are you just confident because it's Ohio State and Ryan Day, and you think we're gonna be good, or do you really think Ryan Day is not doing well in hiring as assistant coaches? I want to hear what you have to say. Whether you agree with me or disagree with me, it's fine. I don't care. I'm not arrogant enough to be the end all and be the end all on this one. Appreciate you guys. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment below. As always, guys, goodbye. God bless and go Bucks.